Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Don't believe me? Then go ahead and fight me on that. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by tonight. This is going to be a very fun, interesting show because we've got some cases that we haven't discussed all that much, some cases that we've discussed quite a bit, but some new developments in them. And it's been a horrifically busy week for me, but in a very good way. Some stuff that I've been working on behind the scenes that I cannot share with you guys just yet, and I hope to share with you soon. But when I do, I hope that you will understand why Josh has been acting like a crazy person for so much. Thank you for pointing out the shirt. Yes, this is, again, one of our new shirts. That's the only thing I'm wearing nowadays. Josh in Aqua. I like it. So thank you to Afton, one of our new mods, and Hazel and Becky B and Simi Sharp and the Off-White Lotus, everybody for being here and all the new faces as well. Really quickly, Josh is feisty tonight. Josh is feisty and sleep deprived, and they're probably very similar to the same thing. But thank you, IGG Rocks, for noticing that. This is Josh feisty and hanging on by a thread, and they're almost the same thing. To introduce myself to some new folks who are here for the first time, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Joshua Ritter. I am a former LA County prosecutor. I was there for a decade, and then I left the office to go into private practice as a criminal defense attorney, and I've been doing that for nearly as much time. This is Courtroom Confidential, and our mission here is to try to present to you as best we can both sides of the courtroom as objectively and fairly as we possibly can, and we hope that we do that. So here is the plan for tonight. First of all, we have a special guest. It is Angenette Levy. I'm a big fan of hers. She has been gracious enough to give us some of her time. She's very busy, been covering the Karen Reed case on a daily basis, along with her channel Crime Fix and a brand new channel that she has. You can find it on YouTube at Angenette 5, but it's just search for Angenette Levy and it should pop up. And we're going to be talking a little bit about Sean Combs first to start off, because Sean Diddy Combs started jury selection this week, and it's been not without its own fireworks and humorous kind of side stories. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll run a poll. And the poll is, as we always do on Wednesdays, we want to hear what you want to hear. We will pick from the following 3 cases for whatever time we have left. That is Bryan Kohberger, some interesting new judgments coming down from the judge, rulings, I guess I should say, coming down from the judge. Hi, everyone from Portugal. I'm sorry, I missed that one. Who's calling from Portugal? Patricia, thank you so much for joining us for Portugal. Patricia, you have to leave us a message on Sunday Funday so we can put that on the map. I'm now becoming very map centric on filling up that map. We can also talk about Gregory Moore. This is a fascinating case out of Cleveland, Ohio. He was a divorce attorney. This is a 10-year-old cold case. He's accused of stabbing to death his own client, and the reason for that was to delay her trial. Pretty wild stuff. I am a very busy attorney. I have wanted to delay trials many times, but the idea that this man was brought to murder to do that is beyond me. So that is Gregory Moore. And the third one is Lori Vallow, and the latest with her trying to get a new trial and juror number 15. And I wanted to hear Angenette's thoughts on that case because she followed that case very closely. So putting up the poll is Bryan Kohberger, Gregory Moore / Aliza Sherman case, and Lori Vallow. But before we get into all of that, please welcome my very good friend and journalist, Angenette Levy. Hey, Angenette, how are you?
Hi, Josh. I'm well. How are you?
I'm very good. I know how busy you are because I see you nearly every day on Law and Crime during those lunch breaks, hopping in on the Karen Reed case. Has that been wild, or has that been wild?
It's been pretty wild, and I've really enjoyed it a great deal because I think this is a much tighter case this time that the Commonwealth has presented. We have a new prosecutor this time around, Hank Brennan, who's a very experienced and skilled litigator. So I think he took a different approach to the case this
Yeah.
time. Lally did. I think Adam Lally, the last time got bogged down in kind of refuting and taking on head on. And I think, I don't blame him for that. The whole idea that there was a frame up conspiracy. So he put on everybody to let the jury decide. So I think it's been interesting to watch. And it's been very interesting to watch Hank Brennan, this new character, come in, put on a tighter presentation. And I feel like it's really, in some ways, kind of thrown the defense for a loop, because it doesn't seem like they're quite as cocksure as they were the last time.
It's funny that you say that, because it's rare that you see, I mean, not unheard of, but it's rare that you see a retrial with a change in the prosecution. Many times in a retrial, it might be new defense attorneys coming in because, quite frankly, they may have run out of money and now they're going with publicly appointed people, or they've just had a strange strategy or something. But for the prosecution to change, again, not unheard of, but a little less common, I would say, just anecdotally. And it does seem as though that has had the most dramatic effect on the difference between the two trials. It's just the way he approaches it and the pace at which he's presenting it seems to me like, it seems like we got to the heart of the issues a lot quicker. Whereas on the first trial, it seemed like we spent a lot of time with the run up to everything.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And every single first responder, we heard from like every one of them in the first trial. Like this trial so far, unless I missed him, I don't think I did. Officer Seraph, we've heard the name, we haven't seen him on the stand. I don't think he was on the stand unless I missed him. So I apologize. You have to be very careful when you talk about this case, because people get very sensitive. But yeah, it's much different this time, and I feel like Hank Brennan really has a way of getting at what he gets at it more quickly, and he knows what he wants to put out there.
Yeah.
So obviously this is not his first rodeo. He defended Whitey Bulger, but for many years he was also a prosecutor, like in local prosecutors' offices before becoming a defense attorney. So it's been interesting to watch. And I also too wonder, watching David Yannetti kind of I feel like he's been kind of sidelined, and I don't know if that's really was the best thing. I'm not sure his crosses were like the best in the world during the first trial, but he's a local guy who can speak to this Massachusetts, Norfolk County jury. Instead, now you've got Alan Jackson, Mr. LA. No offense, Josh. I know you're in LA, coming in and trying to talk to this jury. And I'm not sure, does that play? So I feel like David Yannetti's kind of being treated like a potted plant.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's so much trial still to come. And it does seem as though they want Alan to handle the kind of eyewitness civilians, as it were. It seems like they've kind of got Yannetti on the some of the police and the experts, like
the medical people, like the doctor talking about the blood thing or whatever.
I wonder too if because the defense does seem to be on their heels a little bit. And again, I'm not trying to say they're doing a bad job. I think they're doing a fantastic job. I think they're all still wonderful attorneys, and there's still plenty of trial to be had.
Sure.
But it does, in my view, seem as though they are kind of catching them, like you said, off their footing a little bit or something like that. But I think that's also a symptom of a retrial. You don't have those gotcha moments anymore as the defense. You don't have those surprise kind of things that become unearthed. These witnesses have seen it before. They kind of know what's coming. They know the questions that they're going to be asked. They know those little kind of traps that might be set for them. And I'm wondering if it's just not kind of, it doesn't have that same impact of that first time trial.
Yeah. And I think you might be right about that. And it's a do-over for the Commonwealth. And with a new lead prosecutor, he may have sat back and watched this, and he sees these things, and he knows what they're doing, because maybe he does it himself, in a different style, mind you. But, I don't know. It just seems, it's a different vibe this time around. And I think Adam Lally, I mean, no fault of his own. He is who he is. Maybe he's more reserved, I think. And I don't think Hank Brennan's not a flamethrower or a bomb thrower by any stretch of the imagination. But he's, I think, maybe more assertive. I mean, we saw that when he was cross-examining the Dr. Wolf, the ARCA guy. So I think that he's a litigator. He's not afraid to mix it up.
No, he's in there. They're fighting toe to toe for sure. Well, despite all of that discussion, we thought we would give you the night off on talking about Karen Read because you've been covering every single day.
But it's so fun to talk about.
I know. So we picked 4 topics of cases that you have been following closely, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on. While we run the poll, let's jump into this first one, though, which is Sean Combs. He's picking a jury right now.
Yeah.
What's interesting, and I learned this actually, I was on Surviving the Survivor with Joel the other night, and he had a guest on, and I forget that guest's name, and now I feel horrible because I'm about to use his information and I forget his name.
Oh, I can look it up for you.
But he talked about how in federal court, and I had forgotten about this, in federal court, much of the voir dire is done by the judge, and that the attorneys sit there for most of it. They don't ask questions. They don't get up and kind of speak and interact with the jurors. The judge does most of the questioning, and then the judge says, okay, great. These are the people you're left with. And so then you're just down to your peremptory challenges. So it makes jury selection that much more difficult. But that's just kind of an aside. Here's some of the issues I've seen people talking about. I actually got a call from a reporter at Us Weekly today, and they wanted to talk to me about this case. And I thought, oh, okay, great. I'll get into some real juicy, in-depth legal analysis of this case. And the reporter was very, very nice, but her first question was about Diddy's appearance. He's in court with, we don't have cameras, so we only have sketches, but apparently his presentation, I don't know what the way he looks is dramatic. And there's kind of the sketch of it, but he's got a head of gray hair now and like a white beard. And their question was, what impact do you think this might have on the jury? And at first I thought, this is what you're calling a lawyer to ask about. But then I thought, you know what? That's actually kind of clever because jurors, that's it. Venu Varghese.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I didn't want to interrupt
you.
Venu,
fantastic guy.
So he's like a professor or something.
Yeah. Very, very smart man. What do you think about this though? Do you think jurors will hear about all of this awful stuff and then take a look over at this guy who's got, head of gray hair, white beard, wearing a Mr. Rogers sweater, and think, maybe they have problems connecting the two?
Well, I always, honestly, in trials, love talking about the close, especially in a high-profile trial. And I say this because I think it's always by design. The close in a high profile trial.
Yes.
Even though there are no cameras in here, this is all for the jury. And think about how we usually see Sean Combs. I mean, I don't know if you have any pictures of him with like fur and, tuxedos and, the shades and, look at him. Look at him. Sean Combs is not Mr. Rogers.
Right there between his suit, necklace, and eyeglasses, he's what, 10 times my net worth in just what he's wearing right there. Right.
Yes. But if we go back to the sweater, to the Mr. Rogers, Sean Combs, they're going to be like, this is a guy who came from nothing and made his way to the top. He is a father to I forget how many kids he has now, like 7 kids or something like that. I think 6 or 7 kids. I've covered the children before and now I can't remember how many he has, but he has a bunch. And he's actually used them to do his PR on Instagram, which I think is kind of gross, but he has done that. But I think he's trying to show, I'm a dad, I'm a person. You could be sitting here. I could be you. I might do weird, I might have threesomes with my girlfriend and bring sex workers into it, but I could be you. And the white beard stuff to me, I'm an old guy. They're saying no hair dye in prison. I was asking people about that. Are they going to allow him to put some Just for Men on or something?
Right.
for the trial.
I
But
think
maybe this
they
plays, like,
want
he's
this
an
look
older
for
guy now.
trial. Yeah.
He's in his like 50s, mid 50s. I'm a dad, I'm an older guy. I could be you sitting here. I might have, $1 billion or whatever, but I think this is all for the jury to present a softer look instead of putting him in a suit and tie.
I agree. I think that even if they had access to hair dye, they would not give it to him. And
Yeah.
it's, people could look at this and say, well, that's kind of gamesmanship. And isn't that dressing him up? And yeah, a little bit it is.
But
But at the same
isn't that
time,
what they do? I mean,
yeah. And at the same time, it is, like you said, is psychologically, subconsciously, jurors are paying attention to these things. Every time I was in trial, I know when something of any kind of import or magnitude happens on the witness stand, you look at the jury and you've got 12 sets of eyes who've darted over towards the defendant. That's how this whole game works. They want everything that's important. They want to see how is the defendant reacting to that, because it's this, it's just kind of a natural inclination to see the person who's accused. What do they think of all of this? So, the idea of jurors paying attention to even the clothing and appearance of the defendant is not outrageous. And I think a smart kind of move on the part of the defense.
and one of your viewers, one of the comments just popped up on the screen and said, I think they want him to look, aged or aged. I would agree with that. I mean, he is of a certain age. I mean, Josh, I'm sorry, but you have some gray hair. I've got
What?
some too. I mean,
Huh?
I pay to get it removed. I will be paying to wash my gray away this weekend. But this may help him. Like, yeah, you've seen me. I put on this persona in public of the,
Yeah.
I'm Sean John with the clothes, and I'm the Puff Daddy, and I'm this mogul, but I'm just a dad. And yeah, I might like to have threesomes with sex workers and my girlfriends, but it was all consensual. Plus, he is going to testify. They've said many times he will testify. So he's going to get up there and tell his story, and it's going to be rags to riches. And I got into drugs, and I might have hit Cassie, and I did something horrible, but I am not a sex trafficker.
Wow. That will be incredible. It's really unfortunate that this isn't televised, that federal trials are not televised, because if he actually does take the stand, that will be in some incredible stuff. I want to talk about the kinds of jurors that people might be looking for in this case. And you've kind of touched on it with this whole lifestyle issue. Actually, let's get into that now, because we can save the Mark Garagos stuff for the end. But the main question people are asking right now is, what types of jurors are each side looking for? And I always think that's the opposite question of what you really should be asking. Because when you're doing jury selection, it's not like, I want juror number 5. Let's make sure they make it on. It's juror number 5. If you love them, the other side hates them, so they're going to boot them. So it's more about identifying the jurors you don't want, right? Instead of asking the question of what kind of jurors do you want, right? It's what kind of jurors don't you want, because that's really all you get, is to kick people off. And so in my view, you have to identify then what are the biggest problems. And for the defense, it's going to be what you've kind of touched on, this idea of his lifestyle. His lifestyle was so out of touch with us, the normal people, the juror pool, of what we're going to understand. Champagne showers and lavish parties and helicopter rides and, the Hamptons and all of this types of stuff, and the sex and the drugs and the multiple partners at once and the sex workers and everything else.
For days on end with IVs and baby oil and all of it. Right. I mean, maybe it's normal for some of you, but I mean, yeah. Right. It sounds insane. The freak offs.
Right. The freak offs. But the defense has to go, okay, yes, but I haven't heard something that's come out of your mouth that's been illegal, or certainly not what he's charged with.
Right.
And so I think they have to identify those people that are so offended by that lifestyle that they can't even imagine it being a legal lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. People who may be incredibly religious, I don't know if the judge is asking questions about that. But they're going to want people maybe who are, I don't know, like a little curious, I don't know. I can't even imagine the judge asking these questions. And I doubt he is. He's probably just asking me to be fair and impartial and all the regular questions. Or have you heard about this case? What do you know about it? Have you seen the Cassie video? I'm sure there are all these questions that are being asked. I've seen some of them, but they're going to have to look and size up these jurors. And I'm sure they're looking at how the jurors are looking at him.
Yeah.
To try to read if there's any reaction. And I've seen some stuff in some of the reporting talking about how one of the prospective jurors retweeted some meme of Sean Combs or something like that. So that person, I think, got the boot. So I think that, the Cassie video is going to be very hard for them to erase from jurors' minds, because one of the prospective jurors, it was a female, said, it would be hard for me to, with having that in my mind, it would be hard for me to see other evidence. So she was excused. So I think it's going to be very difficult with Cassie, at least, because I assume her testimony will be very powerful.
Yeah.
On direct.
And
that brought in this new attorney, this I think Westmoreland, Nicole Westmoreland, if I'm mixing up her name, out of Atlanta, to possibly cross-examine her, because she's a sexual assault survivor.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, to be in there when this happens would be very interesting.
Yeah. I think the most difficult thing for a defense attorney to do is to cross-examine a victim of this type of crime, this type of abuse, sexual or domestic violence. And to get up there, because you have to, if you're the defense attorney, you have to call this person a liar, right? I mean, that's what you're doing through your cross-examination. Maybe you're saying your memory bad, this, that, or the other, but you're essentially finding a way to call that person a liar, but doing it in such a delicate way that you don't turn the jury off to you completely for coming after someone who's been traumatized, right? It's such a difficult tap dance.
I think it is, or do you go about it in a softer way? And do you go about it in a way that says, you were kind of on board with this at first, and then maybe you got into it and you didn't like it, and then you got out of it and you left.
Right.
And it was a toxic relationship, and then you get out of it. And then, I mean, keep in mind, they do have this evidence that her lawyer went to Sean Combs and said, "I'm going to write a book.
Sure.
If you don't give me like $30 million, I'm writing this book."
Yeah.
And or I'll file a lawsuit, or whatever she said. It was something to that effect, according to the Combs camp.
Yeah.
And so they said, "No, we're not giving you any money." So she filed a lawsuit. She called their bluff. And so I guess you could paint it as, well, you had a good time when you were doing this, and then you leave, and then you decide, oh, things aren't as rosy. This is where I'm thinking maybe they could go with this.
Yeah, right.
Things aren't as rosy after you leave Sean Combs, and then you wanted to cash in. I mean, I'm sure that's what they're going to say, because they're saying this was all consensual.
100%. And that brings me to my next point about what kind of jurors does the prosecution need to be worried about? And that's the type of people who are going to have exactly that sort of thinking, which is, why did you guys wait so long? Wait a minute. You wait a minute. You sued this guy before you went to the police. You're telling me this might have been all about money. And that is going to be something that some jurors, I'm not saying everybody, but some jurors are going to have a tough time with, the idea that that jurors many times try to place themselves in the position of the victim and go, would I have behaved this way had this happened to me, to try to tell whether or not that person's telling the truth. And I think they make the mistake of putting themselves in the positions of victims like this if they've never experienced that. And they go, well, I would have run to the police immediately, or I would have never waited this long to report something like this horrible taking place. But it's an obstacle. It's definitely a hurdle that the prosecution's going to have to get past.
And they must feel like they can do it, because they've brought the case. And it is interesting, Josh. It seems like the feds really dove into this after Cassie's lawsuit. That's really what made them to stand up and take notice of this. Because if you read the first indictment, it was all about Cassie, and everything in there was about her lawsuit. It was almost like it came from her lawsuit. And then they started digging deeper. And they've got these other victims who apparently were also former romantic partners of his, and one was an employee. The other victims who are actually charged, he's actually charged with trafficking. They're actual former girlfriends, is what I've been told. So, it kind of makes you wonder. I don't know. I mean, he's a very powerful guy too. You got to take that into account. I mean, this is somebody who's a billionaire. If
Yeah.
you're a woman who's dating this guy and you leave him, I mean, he can destroy you. He can
Yeah.
destroy everything about your life.
Yeah.
So, there is that power dynamic there. And there is that part of the sex trafficking statute that talks about coercion. And so I think that's probably a huge part of this as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, this is an interesting question from Darlene63. Did he charge the people that attended the parties? And I mean, I think what Darlene is asking is, did the government charge the people that attended the parties? And why I like this question is it's something to think about how these federal cases are done.
Mm-hmm.
And that this is the United States versus Sean Combs. But then in the indictment, it talks about this criminal enterprise and all of these people that were working with him and for him to help him facilitate this crime. But it's only one defendant, which means usually, per the way the government works, all of those other people,
witnesses.
correct. Yeah, they've all lined
Damian
up.
Williams, when he announced this, he's like, "Hey, call us before we call you."
Yeah.
Like he was like, do you want to be he was essentially saying, do you want to be a witness or a defendant? Like or a co-conspirator. I mean, he kind of said that without saying it. But yeah, it makes you wonder, do they have, other people in the enterprise? And that gets lost in this, Josh. That other charge, the RICO charge. Nobody talks about that. They just talk about the sex trafficking. So, do they have people within his organization who are cooperating?
Oh, I think 100%. And I think that it happens exactly how you say it happens. And in fact, I've dealt with it on the business end of the government, where they say, in no uncertain terms, kind of like, where do you want to fall in this whole thing?
Yeah.
Right. They talk about people are either targets or witnesses or in between. And it's like, which path would you like to choose here? This is your fork in the road. We are going after the big fish. And unless you want to be teamed up with him, you better help us out here. And I think that's why we haven't seen any superseding indictments that have included anybody else, because everybody has gone, okay, yes, please. How do I help?
Yeah, I think you could be right about that. And but I also do, I do think, Josh, when the government first came out and they raided his place and there were all these civil suits, I was expecting a little bit more. Not that this is not serious. I mean, these are incredibly serious charges that he is facing. But after everything we were hearing with these civil suits, I was expecting that the government, you go into somebody's house with like the SWAT team like that, and that's how they do search warrants. I mean, that's just how it goes. But I was expecting like that they were gonna bring more, into the indictment. So these are people he had relationships with.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird to me, given the fact that all of these other people have made these horrific allegations of sexual assault over many decades.
Yeah. I agree with you. I thought we would have like this multiple count indictment, but I think the way that they're handling it is this kind of idea that we're wrapping everything up in this RICO charge. That
this is what we can prove, and this
right.
is
And we're going to show all of the bad stuff in this one charge. And they could put him up away essentially for the rest of his life with just a couple of these convictions. So it's not like they really needed to pile on. Rowena Rains, thank you so much. Asked a really great question too. What about his fake apology? Won't that hurt him? Won't that hurt him? Yes, it will. Yes, it will. This is I think what Rowena is referring to is
his video on Instagram.
Right. In a colossal PR misstep, which
so
you
bad.
always see. They, there was some settlement, something falls apart. The video comes out. He's been denying it forever. And then he gets in front of a camera, as you see with all these celebrities. And they think if they just have this sincere mea culpa with the people and look them straight in the eye and say how sorry they are, it'll all go away. And it never goes away. And then it comes back to bite them. I think they're going to use this in this trial. Don't you?
They very well may. And they certainly may use it on cross-examination to impeach him. I don't know. I mean, the video was awful. I mean, I don't know if he just did it stream of consciousness. I don't know if somebody helped craft the statement. I mean, it was so bad. And they dropped it on like a Sunday afternoon, I think, or something like that. But it was just so ick. I mean, literally, this video was like an earthquake felt around the world. It dropped on a Friday. And he's stomping and dragging a woman. And you're just like, I needed to go to rehab. And I was like, well, you needed something. I'm sure you needed to go to rehab too. But he kind of made it all about himself too, which was gross.
It happens. You see this all the time in these celebrity cases. They have become so programmed to be so concerned with their reputation, and they listen to their PR people so much that when these crises happen, they stop listening to their lawyers and they're only listening to their PR people. And that's when you get these statements like this, because I guarantee you his lawyers did not advise any of that, but he wanted to, save his reputation or something, and comes out with that statement. Johnny Knoxville, hello, my friend, says, thanks to Angenette for putting up with over caffeinated true crime nuts at your time off tonight.
That's very funny. I wasn't feeling that, but yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's very sweet of you to invite me.
All right. I think we have time to get to maybe one of our poll questions. Kaylin, do we have the results of that? I like to put Kaylin on the spot immediately and not give her any warning that that's what I'm going to do. Just have
back there. She's like, okay, now let me figure this out.
Right.
Thanks, Josh.
58% Kohberger. Well, that's pretty definitive. Okay, let's talk about this, because there was some interesting things that happened in this case, and I know you've been following this one closely. Yes. So first, the judge came out with some new rulings today, but I want to talk about one thing he's already ruled on, and a recent quote I saw from him on this, and I just like it because it's kind of a little bit of a jab at Kohberger's attorney, Ann Taylor. But they have been desperately trying to get rid of the death penalty on this case for some time, and they have literally, I think they said that they've challenged it 13 times.
Yeah, I thought it was like 3, but I mean, I guess I've read everything they've filed in this case, but I saw the number 13 thrown out there, and I'm like, really? It's been 13? Maybe I've just like lumped them all together. 13
different arguments lodged, and every single one of them turned down. I don't know, but I do know that they have spent a large part of their time talking about this.
Yeah,
and the last one that they brought was this idea that there's so much discovery.
Yes.
That the judge, we don't have enough time, and therefore you should disqualify the death penalty because we don't have enough time to get to it. And the reason they brought that up is it worked essentially a similar argument in the Lori Vallow case. The judge didn't allow it in that case because there was so much discovery.
But also, there was a difference in that case. The state in the Vallow case had handed over, and there was 5. Let's talk about, first of all, I can't even envision a terabyte. Like, I've got a 2 terabyte hard drive floating around my office here somewhere, and it's like this big.
Right.
But in the Vallow case, there was like 5 terabytes of data of discovery. In the Kohberger case, there's 68 terabytes, which is like, I don't know, a couple few garages full of stuff or something. I don't know. It's a tremendous amount of data, but the state said most of it's irrelevant. In the Vallow case, though, the reason why Judge Boyce struck the death penalty in the Idaho case there was because the state handed over stuff late in the game. and he found that it was going to prejudice her, during her trial. So Judge Boyce struck the death penalty because it was a late disclosure. And so that's the reason why. In this case, they've got 68 terabytes of evidence. The state claims they've had most of it since 2023. So they got like a 50 terabyte hard drive sometime in, yes, Pammy, 68 terabytes. Yes, it's a huge amount of stuff because they've got reams of video. They went all over Moscow collecting video. So there's tons of video. There are cell phone extractions from all of these people.
It adds up. That kind of digital
tons
stuff
of
adds up quickly. Yeah.
But but they got a 50 terabyte hard drive, I think, in the spring of 2023. So, during this hearing last month, Judge Hippler basically said, well, why am I hearing about this now? And then Ann Taylor said, well, this has been an ongoing issue. We brought it up in the past. And he said, but and then he said, well, have you gone to the judge? There's this Judge Motson who oversees the resources given to the defense. He's like, have you hired more paralegals? Have you gone to him to hire more, like 5 or 6 paralegals to help you get this information or to sift through it all? And she's like, well, I could do that, but it's not going to get the information into my head. And he's like, I've dealt with complex cases. He said, you have these people go through the stuff and then they hand you a document if it's important. And, so he's literally
he handed it to her a little bit. And that's what
he let her have it.
Yeah.
He literally did let her have it. And he was like, he even said something like, well, you already told me it'll take you 1 billion years to get ready for trial. You're never going to be ready.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of funny. And then in his order denying their request to strike the death penalty, because it's usually you hear defense attorneys complain that the state's not giving them discovery.
Right.
And she was like wanting it indexed, and she wanted hot documents, like a hot sheet with Brady material, all this stuff. And the judge is like, no. No. So he was like, he kind of let her have it a little bit. And Andy's like, you took on another death penalty case.
Yeah, that was the part I loved. Is
he's like, so
his quote was, Kohberger has not sought. So to your point, Kohberger meaning her.
Yes.
Has not sought additional resources to hire additional staff to review discovery or obtain litigation document control software to help organize or sort the evidence. So first of all, you haven't done what you need to do to get through what you have already.
Right.
And his lead counsel insisted that she be allowed to take on a second high-profile capital case despite the voluminous discovery in this case. That was the part, I can tell you right now, that was the part that did it for him. Don't come in here and complain and say you don't have enough time, and then you're picking up another high-profile death penalty case at the same time. Like, if you can do that, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. We're heading to trial.
Yeah, I think he was really annoyed by that, because I mean, he said she insisted that she take it. Because 2 death penalty cases at once, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. Plus, they've got 2 lawyers on this case. But yeah, I don't know why. If she could get a team of paralegals, why would you sift through all that junk? Like, go have paralegals.
You don't. Nobody does. I mean, that's just not the way it works. It's absolutely true. Nobody is going through all of that stuff.
This is a DNA case, a video case, and a cell phone case. That's what this case is.
Yeah. No, I think the judge made the right call, and I think he kind of threw that last little part in there just as a dig at her. But you're absolutely right. They've had this case for plenty of time. Yes, it's a huge case, but it's not an undoable case with the resources and time that they had. And don't be talking to me about how busy you are if you're taking on other cases. This is a huge case, but don't be taking on other cases if you feel like it's going to be too much for you.
And Josh, it cracked me up too, because he also said something in his order, like to the effect of, and I can tell by defendants' motion practice that they've had time to go through and all their revealing all their expert disclosures.
Right.
He's like, you filed all this crap that I had to read.
I'm looking at a stack of stuff on my desk. You guys have plenty of time to work.
You're doing just fine.
Yeah. Funny.
I call him
The
Judge Dry Sass because I feel like
Yeah.
he's kind of sassy.
I like him. I think he's a good judge. I think he's a good judge for this trial in particular too.
Yeah, I think that he's brought some, like, let's keep this on track. I mean,
Yeah.
look, are you ever going to be completely ready for this case? No.
No,
And
but
the
that's
longer, the more time she has, almost it seems like the prosecution, they're just going to have more time to
yeah.
refine their case.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been a long time. I realize it's a serious case, but you know, this is I want to say this the right way. Even though we're talking about a tremendous loss of life, the case itself is really not that complicated. There are cases that involve multiple defendants, multiple crime scenes, multiple interactions on several different dates at several different times. You know, I'm talking like wide-ranging, widespread, very complicated cases. This is, even though you're talking about the loss of 4 beautiful lives,
That's horrible.
it took place on one evening. It's one incident that took place on one evening. So as far as the complexity of proof, it's not quadrupled by the loss of life. It's the same. There they are, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. It's the same circumstances, though, that are fairly straightforward facts. You're talking about one evening, one event, you know, one defendant. And so as far as proving all of that, yeah, there's going to be a lot of video evidence and cell phone evidence and DNA evidence and everything else, but the complexity of the case itself is really not on the wide scale of things all that complex.
Yeah, the allegation is that one guy hung around in the area of this house, or at least drove around in the area of this house many times over a matter of months, and for whatever reason, decided on that morning and that night, this is the allegation made by the state, to go in there and do what he did. I personally don't think he went in there with the intention of killing 4 people. I think that I personally.
Oh, you think that that happened to him that evening?
I mean, just based on what we know, and I could be completely off base and completely wrong. I mean, leaving survivors just seems like crazy to me. They've said there's no connection. You know, there's no digital connection between him and any of these victims.
Mm-hmm.
They've said that in the court documents, or at least the judge has said that based on the expert disclosures and all this stuff. So it doesn't sound like he knew any of them. You know, based on what we knew, he went to Maddie's room first. I personally, my theory is that he went there to target Maddie in some fashion. He went to her bedroom, whether it's Bryan Kohberger or some other person. I'm not convicting Bryan Kohberger. I'm just saying, based on what we know, it seems to me this person went to that bedroom first, and Kaylee was not living there. And it sounds like they've said in the court documents that Maddie was so intoxicated that she could not fight back. So they've got an expert who's going to testify to that on rebuttal if need be. But it sounds like Kaylee was awakened. And so I think there was an idea or something that was planned, and things did not go according to plan.
You might be right. I mean, the thing about this case is there's so much we don't know, and I have heard little tricklings of evidence that does seem that, as you know, that she may have been the target. But
I could be wrong. This is just my theory.
You're right.
Covering it.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, though, that the biggest question mark in this whole thing to me, and the part that the prosecution is really going to have to deal with the most, is why. The motive behind all of this. And even though that's not an element of the crime, we talk about this all the time, the prosecution doesn't have to prove motive. In a case like this in particular, people are going to be sitting there going, I don't get it. Yeah, I see the DNA. Yeah, I see the cell phone evidence. Yeah, I see the surveillance video. I'm getting how you're placing this case together. But why? Why would this guy do this? And it's becoming an issue. And I'm curious what the prosecution is going to do about that. But to that point, there is this theory going out there.
Yeah.
Howard Bloom is a forensic psychologist who recently wrote this piece in an online newsletter called Airmail. And he talks about a theory that, and people have been running with this. I don't know if this is actually going to be the prosecution's theory, but you can see how people are stretching to find some reason as to the why. Bryan Kohberger had a famous professor when he was at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. She's a forensic psychology professor named Catherine Ramsland. And that he had, there she is, apparently done this, according to Bloom, in some sort of effort to impress her, to show her how the student has become the master here. Now, I'll let you respond to all of that, and then I'll tell you what Ramsland's comments on this have been.
Yeah, I actually reached out to her about this because I've interviewed her before.
Oh, really?
I really like her. And she has said many times that she will not be commenting on Bryan Kohberger. And I reached out to her the other day because I was like, I don't like reporting on other people's stuff that's not true. And it makes me kind of queasy. Like, I was always taught, we don't go correcting other people's bad reporting. Like, that's how I was kind of brought up. Right.
Right.
But I reached out to her and I said, I said, hey, I just wanted to reach out. I know you've told me in the past you're not going to talk about this, but I know you know about this. And she said she's still not commenting on the case or teaching him. And she said she did give out a statement, and I have that. And she's refuting Howard Bloom's allegations. And she said that he's spreading falsehoods. So I do have that, what she put out.
Do you have it handy?
Yeah, I do. I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
But I just don't, I'm not buying that, because everything, when I've talked to Dr. Ramsland in the past about BTK and things like that, this wouldn't impress her. She does this, you know what I mean? She does this work to try to research the criminal mind.
While you're searching for that, I will say, first of all, I don't think that this is a good theory. This is obviously not coming from the prosecution. It's coming from this Mr. Bloom. I think it just kind of plays into this idea of what people are trying to search for. But what's interesting about it is that, she doesn't have to be in on it. He's trying to say that in his warped psychological head, he was doing it for her. But she had a response. Go ahead and read it.
Yeah. Well, she shared this with Bryan Etten, and she told me she gave it to him. I had no email correspondence with Bryan Kohberger while he was at WSU. He has not been in touch with me since his arrest. I read Howard Bloom's book, and I read a lot of it's like anonymous sources, because he says people close to the Kohbergers and anybody close to the investigation, they don't want to talk because they'll get in trouble, or they don't want to be like maligned or whatever. But in his book, he wrote that Dr. Ramsland reached out to Bryan Kohberger's parents after he was arrested in Pennsylvania, and she was trying to be kind to them, because she felt for what they were going through. And she said they apparently had said something to the effect of, he was a very smart student of mine. But it was more like framed as though she was feeling badly for them. And that she didn't feel like, he claimed she told the parents he shouldn't fight extradition because he didn't want to fight extradition. But apparently the family thought he should fight extradition. He wanted to go back to Idaho to prove his innocence or whatever he said. And she's like, well, he's going to get extradited anyway, so he should just waive. But she said, I called his parents as a gesture of kindness, but I do not advise them about the case. And she used called in the past tense. I did not call them hours after the arrest, as Bloom claims. Bloom, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
I have never talked to his sister about any book. That was another thing, that she was helping his sister write a book. I never mentioned Kierkegaard in my classes. I did not broker anything regarding a lawyer. I have not been invited by the Kohbergers to Idaho. I I don't know where they'll be staying. I don't know who Blum's source is or why he reports information for which he has no proof. So there you go.
Yeah, and you know what? Good for her too, because why are you dragging me into this, right? I mean, she's like, listen, I don't, just because he happened to have been a student of mine, now you're going to start to say that somehow I'm involved or played a role or, should even have my name thrown into the mix with this whole horrible, horrible, nightmarish case. Good for her for at least coming out and taking a firm stand on that. But I guess it just is kind of illustrates my larger point that what is the prosecution going to do about this? I mean, Ms. B says here, still would love to know how Bryan Kohberger knew these four people. That's the question that the jurors are going to have. The jurors are going to want to know what is the connection here.
Yeah, and it is weird because it's like, okay, I mean, I don't know. It didn't seem like he knew much of anybody except the people at his apartment complex who, like the guy across the hall or whatever. He had been to Moscow in July when he first moved there for a pool party. He went there with the one neighbor. So it's not like he knew a bunch of people. And like when I talked to his one neighbor who lived downstairs from him, she was like a woman. She was Asian. She had kind of like a heavy accent, but she said he would be up or maybe she was Hispanic. I can't remember, Latino. But she I can't remember. I'd have to look at the video, but she was, she didn't want her face shown, but I recorded her. But she said he'd be up in the middle of the night, like vacuuming and stuff. Like, so he was a night owl. He's like nocturnal.
Yeah.
But it was annoying to her because she lived downstairs and she's got kids and she's trying to have her kids go to sleep stay asleep in the middle of the night. And your upstairs neighbor's banging around vacuuming in the middle of the night. So he's obviously a night owl. But it's weird. Yeah. Like I'm not sure he knew any of them at all.
Well, and I will say this too, that it might come down to the prosecution just has to simply say, we don't know, but that doesn't change anything. I mean, there's, ever heard of Ted Bundy? And there's been discussions. But I mean, Ted Bundy went into a sorority where he knew anybody.
Victims,
and attacked random people in a sorority house and killed them all. Sometimes people with violent intentions just take it out on a moment of opportunity, and that could be as simple as that. It could be as simple as there was dim lighting and good parking on that street. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it could, I don't know what it was, but it could be something as simple as, this looks like a good spot. I saw some kids walking back to that house in the middle of the night. That's where I'm going to go to commit this random crime of violence that I just want to commit for my own reasons.
Well, and you bring up Ted Bundy, and I hate to say this, I'm not even talking Bryan Kohberger right now, but there are some I've seen other people on other YouTube channels, and I don't like being all like speculative like that.
Yeah.
But he was Ted Bundy was a law student in the state of Washington. Bryan Kohberger is like a PhD student in the state of Washington. Where these girls lived, that's like Greek Row or whatever you call that. So I mean, there are a lot of the Sigma Chi house is over this way, and here's the King Road house, and it's like a lot of sorority and fraternity types live in that area.
Yeah.
Was there some weird thing? But also, Josh, I've been to that house, and like you go up to that, like there's here, like say here's that King Road house right there, that weird shaped house. There's a driveway right next to it, and there's like over here is that weird apartment building with all those apartments, and you go up here's the house, and then you go up the driveway. It's really steep, and then you turn, and then there's this like kind of space where there's a parking lot, and you sit there, and then you're just like bird's eye view right into Maddie's room.
Oh, there you go.
So I always felt like
could be that
there was like, that's why I think it was, I think it was Maddie, and she had her pink boots, her cute little pink cowboy boots in the window with an M, a letter M. It was like X marks the spot, except it was an M. Yeah. So I just kind of wondered, was there, whoever did this, was there a fascination with Maddie?
Yeah.
And that I still think, Ethan wasn't even supposed to be. He lived in the Sigma Chi house. He was there visiting his girlfriend Xana that night, so that's why he was there. And so I don't know.
Yeah. No, and I don't, just to be clear too, I don't bring up Ted Bundy to at all play into some sort of copycat conspiracy or something like that. I just bring it up that sometimes people commit truly random acts of violence against people that they have no connection to, and that's just what it is. And that might be what we're left with here. We might never know why Bryan Kohberger picked that house and picked those girls. And if that was his intention to begin with or not, we might have no idea if at the end of this case, we're able to prove that it was him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I actually interviewed a woman who survived the Sigma Chi, or what, Sigma Chi? Am I getting Omega? Chi Omega. I think that was the Chi Omega house. I actually interviewed a woman.
Wow.
Yeah, she survived. He beat her up like at CrimeCon a couple of years back.
Wow.
Kathy Rubin.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, poor woman, she played dead, I think, or he had hit her, and it just sounds horrifying to me. Like, but thank God she survived.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people do crazy stuff. We try to make sense of it because we're reasonable, sensible people, and we just don't think like that.
Yeah. Well, are you going to go up there to Idaho? I'm going to try to come up for the opening statements. Are you going to be stationed up there for the whole thing?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be there the entire time, but I will be going out to Boise, as they say. Boise. It's not Boise. I've been schooled on this. It's Boise. Boise. I have to say it right. So.
Well, Angenette, thank you so much for spending the time with us, talking about those cases. I always appreciate your insights because you do the deep diving and the investigative work. I want everybody to check out your new channel. Search for Angenette Levy, but it's under the handle of Angenette5. And I think the last time we looked, you were just about to break 5,000 subscribers. So maybe if we could get everybody's cooperation tonight, we could accomplish that goal for you.
I love that.
Yeah. But thank you again for everything. And I hope that you will allow me to bug you sometime soon to come back.
Yeah, I would love that. It'd be fun. I'll be covering the Kohberger stuff tomorrow too on Crime Fix.
Oh, fantastic!
The latest stuff about the state getting being allowed to do the mental health evaluation for the penalty phase. So.
Yes, yeah, a lot happening with that case. I feel like we're going to get a steady trickle of news on that case until the trial begins.
Yeah, we could. There's a pretrial conference coming up on the 15th, and then they have by the 14th, the defense does, to submit their alternative perpetrator evidence to the court.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. It was another stargazer. It was
two other dudes.
Two other guys. Yeah. All right. Thank you again. You're fantastic. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Josh. Thanks so much for having me.
Bye-bye. All right. Okay. Thank you so much to Angenette. Please, you guys, support her with this new channel of hers. I really have appreciated all of her help and support that she has done for us on this channel. So please return the favor if you get a chance. All right. You know what? We got a few minutes. I can probably fit this in quickly. I know that I think the next runner-up on our poll was Gregory Moore. And this case is just fascinating. And I'm not going to do a super deep dive, but I wanted to talk to you about it before I give you some announcements. Don't go anywhere. We do have announcements. But this is a case I think we're going to be following more closely because it's just fascinating to me. But Gregory Moore is out a former divorce attorney. There he is, out of Cleveland, Ohio. In 2013, Aliza Sherman, who was 53 years old, was going through a very contentious divorce, and she was stabbed multiple times in her back and neck. She actually survived the initial attack and calls 911 and dies at the hospital. Horrific story. She was attacked by a hooded figure outside of the law offices of Gregory Moore. Gregory Moore had asked her to come there that day. He had been very specific about her letting him know when he arrived. He had been very specific about when she should come, all of these types of things. And this was the day before she had a trial set to begin in her divorce. The prosecution, Lee T's already reading my mind here. The prosecution is going with the theory that Gregory Moore actually killed her because he didn't want to do the trial, because he wanted to delay her divorce trial. This is wild to me. But there's actually some teeth to this. There's actually some legs behind where this theory comes from, because apparently Gregory Moore had pled guilty earlier to calling in bomb threats to the court when he had a court hearing and didn't want to show up. So listen, I'm a lawyer. I get tired. I have plenty of times that I've had court hearings or things I've wanted to delay. I've had trials sneak up on me and I don't want to start them and I want to delay them. And you do your level best to get out of them, but that's part of the job. But I have never been pushed to the point of calling in a bomb threat, let alone being pushed to the point of actually murdering someone so that you don't have to do the trial. That is the theory, apparently, that the prosecution is going with in this case. Now, there's more evidence than just this motive linking him to this, but there's one interesting wrinkle in the whole thing. One, apparently, like I said, there are text messages and other communications between him and Aliza asking specifically for when she's showing up, kind of indicative of the idea that he was trying to make sure exactly when she would be there. And between him and another unindicted person that they feel might be involved in this whole thing. They don't know if he's actually the hooded man who stabbed her, but maybe had paid this person to do that. And then there's also some evidence about the key card entry to his building. Apparently he was using the key card entry, but not actually entering the building. The police have looked both back at the key card usage and the surveillance and seen that he was maybe being a little hinky with all of that. One question I have about all of this is why this took so long to piece together. What we haven't really heard. We've heard the reports of new evidence, but we don't know what that is, or new revelations, but we don't know quite what that is. What I'm thinking is usually in these cases, when they get this old, it could be this unnamed co-conspirator came forward, says, you know what, I'm trying to get myself a deal on another case, or I know some information and I just want to get it off my chest, and has decided to come forward. That is my sneaking suspicion. I have no idea. But in any case, he has been indicted, and the prosecution is going with this absolutely wild theory. Now, the wrinkle in this is that she was getting a divorce at the time, and her estranged husband, Dr. Sanford Sherman, refused to cooperate with the investigators at the time, which means that, if you would be looking for somebody with a motive to have this woman murdered, you would expect that the husband that she's going through the contentious divorce with would be suspect number one. But he has never been charged, and he's actually already passed away. So a case we will be following closely. And the question that I have for all of you is this motive theory so wild that it might confuse jurors? I mean, listen, we've talked about how the prosecution doesn't have to prove motive. But when you do try to prove it, if you don't prove it enough, or if you're proving it creates more questions than answers, might it backfire on you? So interesting to me. I mean, it sounds like they've got the goods to bring the charges. It sounds like they have other evidence tying him to this, and they might not need the motive evidence, but it might be another one of those cases where they need to provide some answer to the jurors. And the best answer they got is this, if true, psychopath just simply didn't want to do a trial and thought it was easier to kill her than it was to go to trial. Fascinating case, tragic, horrible case. but also fascinating. Sometimes facts are stranger than fiction. Absolutely true sarcasm. Appreciate that. All right, you guys, let's get to some quick announcements before I let you go. I appreciate you all being here. What you missed on Monday is we had the latest in our Courtroom Confidential conversation series with Chase Hughes. It was fantastic. Chase is a fascinating dude, and he's got a great tan, but he's a fascinating dude. And Courtroom Confidential, Angenette flew past 5,000. Way to go, CC crew. That's fantastic. Thank you, Tiffany, for updating us on that. Yeah, just what an incredible conversation. Check it out, please, if you guys haven't seen it already. Then all this week, we're following the Karen Reed case, but we're doing it on our other channel, Courtroom Confidential Live Trials. So please check that out. CC Live Trials is the handle. And we've had a faithful group who've shown up every single day, and I've been stopping in as much as I can to say hi and add comments here and there. But it's a great place to go with your fellow Courtroom Confidential members and watch that trial. On Saturday, of course, we will have our weekly roundup at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern. As always, please check that out this coming Saturday. On Sunday, it is another Sunday Fun Day. So please leave us your messages. You know where to go to leave the messages. Should I do that, Kaylin? Show the website? Okay. That is going to be right here at, why isn't it working? There we go. Courtroom Confidential. Go to thecourtroomconfidential.com, click on send a voice message, and leave us a message so that we can answer them live for you this coming Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We had an incredible amount of questions last time, and they were all great, and we're putting everybody on the map. We're answering the questions, and we're calling a friend if we're phoning a friend if we need to. It's been really fun, and I appreciate all you guys showing up every week. And then finally, for Monday, we have the next iteration in our conversation series will be with true crime YouTuber Kimberlea. So that is coming up this coming Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Also has a amazing backstory. She is a fighter. She really had to struggle to get to where she's at. And we had a really great chat, and I love her background. If we're talking about backgrounds, I think she's got one of the best in the game. So please check that out. Kimberlea coming up in our conversation series. Let me thank our newest members: McCrage 94, Lindsay Hendricks, SoCal retired paralegal, Jamie G, Sandra S, Jennifer Bradley, Legal Cat Chinatown, Cat 747, Carol Lynn, Miss McGuire, PTA girl, maybe, Jean, Gigi, Jan, Tracy Conrad, Melanie Schuler, Darlene 63, Camilla, Lori Montcalm, Little Barb, sounds like a rapper, Little Barb, Leslie and Billy, Wilban, Eddie Ruth, Lindsay Brillhart, Rock and Rolla, Harry Me Boy, Missy Angels, Rosemary Hill, Chihuahua Mama, Stephen Gribby, Innis Dev B, Sarcasm, love the spelling of it, and I'm going to say greater than I. Thank you so much, Jody, for gifting 5 Courtroom Confidential memberships. Is there anybody else I forgot to thank? Laura Waldy for gifting 5 Courtroom Confidential memberships. If you guys want to take part in the Courtroom Confidential membership program, please go to thecourtroomconfidential.com to sign up. That's the easiest place to do it. In the meantime, you've all been fantastic. I appreciate you spending some time with me. Special thanks to Angenette for spending time with us this evening. And I will see you guys on Saturday for the roundup. And please join us on Sunday for Sunday Fun Day. Take care, everybody.